Hello, I'm Dana Beal with Project Illumination, and today I have Donna Cameron, Cameron here with me, and she's the author of A Year of Living Kindly. And I'm going to tell you a little more about her, but hi, Donna.
Hi, Dana. It's good to see you.
Yes, good.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thanks for agreeing. Before I read Donna's bio, I want to tell a little bit about Project Illumination, which is my podcast, and it's dedicated to shining light and love into the world and into the workplace. And my book, the Illuminated Work, can't talk today, The Illuminated Workplace, Shining Light on Workplace Culture, is about rebuilding relationships in the workplace, but it applies to the world. And I've been a speaker all over the United States on this subject, but I realized many years ago that the subject of relationships affects not only workplaces, but families and communities and everywhere we go. And Donna, I would say right now there seems to be less kindness in the world, less civility in the world. And so your book is probably more timely than ever. Would you agree?
Sadly, I agree. Yes, that's how things are looking these days, and I think it's going to take a lot of effort to turn things around.
I think so too. And I think your book and my book are some of the efforts to help people see what's going on. Let me read a little bit about you and then we'll delve into your book and why you wrote it and how we can all learn to be kinder to one another. Donna Cameron spent her working career with the nonprofit organization and causes where she regularly saw kindness in action and was awed by its power to transform. That's a really great statement. While she considers herself a responsibly nice person with an occasional lapse into bitchiness, she knew that true kindness was a step above. When she committed to a year of living kindly, she learned that it takes practice, patience, and understanding, and a sense of humor. And I would definitely agree with you with the sense of humor. Her book, A Year of Living Kindness, Choices That Will Change Your Life and the World Around You, came out after that year-long commitment, which has now become her lifelong commitment. The book is now in its 13th printing and has won more than a dozen literary awards. Plus, it's been published in several foreign languages. Those are great accomplishments, Donna. So
Thank you.
welcome and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much.
You know, one of the first things I wondered, because I have your book, I ran into you at a conference, and um, I knew who you were, and I was so happy to meet you in person. And um, I wondered then, what prompted you to write the book about A Year of Living Kindly?
Well, I did not start out with any intention of writing a book. I started out with the intention of making a deep dive into kindness for a year. I've always really admired kind people. There are some, and there aren't a lot, but who in whose presence you just feel good. They exude kindness, and I've been blessed to know a few people like that in my life, and I wanted to be more like them. So I would set an intention to be kind or be kinder. And it's not that I was a bitch or that I was unkind, but I think for most of my life I settled for nice. Um, so I set a resolution to really focus on kindness for a year, and I knew I needed to find some way to hold my feet to the fire. So I set up a blog and I invited my friends to follow it, knowing that if I lost interest or let it fall by the wayside, that would be a pretty visible failure. And that's really all it took to hold me accountable and keep kindness on my radar for a full year. It just felt really right. So I had no intention originally to write a book, but at the end of the year, when I sort of posed the question to the people who were following my blog, and by then there were quite a number of people following, I said, well, shall I continue? And they all said, yes, continue. And why don't you write a book? And I had written another book, and I've always been a writer, so it seemed like kind of duh. Why didn't I think of that? So they didn't have to twist my arm.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to write a book. But I'm amazed that you had the commitment to keep doing it day by day. I think about people
Yeah.
making commitments even to a gym program or, a workout,
Yeah,
whatever, and it's so
or a
easy.
diet, anything like that.
Right.
It's so easy to say, oh, not today.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one of the things I heard you say, and is one of my questions, is what is the difference between nice and kindness? Because a lot of people know how to be nice, but
Yeah, I think nice is easy, and if other people had mothers like mine, I was raised in a house where the mantra was be kind or be nice. My mother, every time I left to go play or do something, be nice, but she never said be kind. And I have just come to notice that they're very different. It may be semantic for some people, but for me, I see a real difference between kind and nice. Outwardly, they may appear to be pretty much the same thing, but there's a difference in attitude and intention and even energy between nice and kind. I think when we're nice, we're doing the polite thing. We're doing what's expected of us. We're saying the words that are civil and that our moms would approve of. But we're not always making a connection and we're not always meeting the other person's needs.
Mhm.
I can be kind and still really merely be tolerating somebody, with my teeth gritted in a false smile and making judgments about them or feeling impatient. But I can't be kind and and do any of those things. I think kind of asks a lot more of me. First thing it asks me to do is withhold judgment, to genuinely
Mhm.
care about that other person and meet them where they are. Um, and not worry about getting anything in return. Kindness makes us vulnerable because we don't know how our kindness is going to be received. It might be misunderstood, it might be rejected, and nobody likes rejection. So we take a risk with kindness that I don't think we take with niceness. Nice is pretty passive and safe. Um,
Mhm.
I've come to see kind really sort of as a verb. It's an action word. For me, the phrase extend yourself really sums up what kindness is. I don't know if you remember him, Dana, but there was a gentleman named Dale Turner in the Seattle area. He was an author, a speaker, a theologian, and he was just an extraordinarily kind man, probably one of the kindest people I've ever met. And he used to hand out little cards to everyone he met that had just two words printed on them, extend yourself.
Mm.
And to me, those two words really capture the essence of kindness. I've carried one of his cards in my wallet for 30 years. And now when I speak to groups, I pass out little cards that say extend yourself. It
Ah,
really, to me, differentiates kind and nice.
yes. Well, and as I listen to you, I of course relate it to the books that I've written and what I speak about. And kindness just sounds so much more authentic and deeper than just being polite, because being polite is more of an action. Not that an action is can't be kind,
Yeah,
but you can act out politeness without really feeling the depth or extending yourself, as you said.
I think you're right. They may outwardly look exactly the same, but we know the difference inside.
Oh, exactly. And so does the recipient or the person we're interacting with. And
Yeah.
you were describing being around people that you can just feel their kindness. It's in their aura. It's almost a vibration that they put out. And
Hmm.
I agree that there are people like that. In fact, I think there are a lot of people like that, but there are many people that are kind of walled up, and they you can't feel the kindness even if it is in there, or the loving kindness within them. What are
Yeah.
Yeah, what are some of, would you describe, because I always look at this in my work, what are some of the blocks to kindness?
Oh gosh. I think fear is probably the biggest one. And fear comes in a lot of different flavors. We're afraid of, it sounds silly, but we're afraid of doing it wrong. You know, go, stepping out of our comfort zone and to help or do something and having it be misperceived or again rejected. We're afraid of calling attention to ourselves. Some of us really, were raised with the notion of stay under the radar, don't call attention to yourself. Um, we're afraid of being vulnerable.
Yes.
So I think fear is a big one, and it takes, it takes practice to overcome it.
Well,
Another one,
oh,
mhm.
go ahead. And then
Oh,
I'm going to add to your comment about fear because with all my audience, since that's a big one, fear.
yeah, I bet it is. Yeah. Well, another one too is time. I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, I really would like to be kinder, but I don't have time.
In this day
And
and age.
there's truth to that because it does take time to be
Hmm.
kind, to think about what the right actions are in this particular situation, or think about the best words to say, or to get out of our comfort zone and offer help, carrying a heavy load, whatever it might be. Sometimes it does take time. Um, but I think if we sort of change how we look at both time and kindness, it's not a barrier. I had a revelation during my year of kindness that kind wasn't something I did only when it was convenient or only when it worked for me. Kind was my job, my number one job. And that just sort of changed everything. And now I try to look for opportunities to be kind. I'm sure I miss lots of them, but time, that time thing just sort of melted away when I thought more about it. And then there are other things that get in the way. A lot of us, and I include myself, are oblivious at times, or we're so we're looking at our iPhone or our smartphone or something, and we don't notice anything else going on around us. And there might be
Hmm.
lots of opportunities to extend a kindness, or people who are extending kindness to us, and we don't notice it.
Hmm.
So we're oblivious, we're lazy,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
we have habits, we have routines, and sometimes getting out of those is is hard. You don't like to leave your comfort zone. And then some people, I had somebody write me not long after the book came out, and they wrote me on my website and said, I really want to thank you because I realized how much I was keeping score in my life.
Ooh.
And, I think a lot of people hesitate, that they say, well, I'm not going to do this for so and so because it's her turn to do, to invite me to do something for me. So we have this ledger we keep in our heads of whose turn it is to do something nice. And if we let go of that and just figure it's all going to work out in the end, we don't need to keep score. It's very freeing.
Oh, absolutely. Everything you mentioned, I have some parallel experience or comment that has to do with the work that I do,
I'll bet.
and which is probably why we're here today
Uh-huh,
with
I'm sure.
with each other. But when you first said fear, I was going to add to that I speak to audiences, and often, well, for the most part, they are leaders and they're at conferences, and I ask them, what is it people are afraid of? And they give me a list, and it's universal wherever I go, and in Canada too, or at
Mhm.
conferences with people from international audiences. They tell me the fears are some of what you included. The fear of being embarrassed,
Yes.
the fear of being humiliated, the fear of looking like they're not smart or looking stupid, or the fear of ultimately, I tell them it all comes down to the fear of being not wanted or needed.
Hmm.
And we all want that recognition that we're wanted and we're needed. And yet we get so wrapped up in our own little needs that sometimes we can't reach out to others. And to bring that full circle, I think we're all interconnected. So,
Oh,
uh,
sure.
yeah, as we give, we receive. If
Yes.
we can
Yeah.
give freely, we will also, it will be returned. And so, if that's true, then we don't need to keep score because what we give out comes back, and we don't have to decide, well, I called her last. It's her turn to call me. I say, you say, extend yourself. I say, just initiate yourself. You initiate it. Don't worry.
Absolutely.
Or you,
Absolutely.
or else you can sit there and feel like I'm a victim. Nobody calls me. Nobody wants to talk to me. Well, then reach out, extend yourself.
Yeah, 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 and just step past that fear. It's
Right.
interesting what you just said reminded me, excuse me, of something I read, oh, just a week or two ago, and that was that most people, when they're at the end of their days, they regret what they didn't do more than the things they did.
Ooh, that's a
So
good one.
So, if you think about that, I didn't reach out and thank that person. I didn't reach out and acknowledge how much that person meant to me. Um, if you think that, later you're going to regret that, maybe that helps you step outside that fear and go ahead and do that thing that you really want to
Mhm.
do, but something's holding you back.
Well, and yeah, I don't know if you heard any of my last podcasts, but I had two different people that talked about people at the end of their life at the 11th hour. So, in fact, one of them, Sandra
Yes.
Boston. Yes, and she's
Yes,
a hos
I did see that. That was a lovely podcast.
yes,
Yes, I do
yes,
know Sandra.
and yes, and she's was a hospice worker. But the point that parallels with what you're saying, or agrees with what you're saying, there are people that are right there at their deathbed that have resentments or regrets. And so the message is if we are here right now, it's not too late. We need to do whatever we can do right now and get past our fears or get past our keeping score, thinking it's not our responsibility. What do you win? What do you win by that?
Right, right. Yeah.
Nothing. Nothing. Well, I noticed that you do such a good job in your book that you always have at the end of each day an action people can take, and you give examples and lessons. But could you share a couple of things that you've experienced or your audience members or readers have described to you that they've done, or any, real life stories about taking action?
Oh, you know what I did, Dana, when I first started doing this commitment to kindness, I signed up for a Google alert. So every day at 4 o'clock, and this has been now 7, 8 years, every day at 4 o'clock, I receive from Google an email that has a link to all the articles that were published in the English language in the last 24 hours that relate to kindness. Um, so every day I get this little boost of energy, and they're usually kind of small things, but they're just lovely. I'm trying to think what I've seen recently, but there was one I just read about a flight attendant who went out of his way to help and comfort a person who had just learned that his sister died. So he was on the flight and crying, and this flight attendant just, helped him, kept checking in on him, bringing him things, helped him be the first one off the plane. Things
Oh,
like that. I hear a lot of stories of kids' kindness, things
mm,
they do, saving their allowance up to help, buy groceries for a homeless family or something like that. One of the things I love about talking with groups, whether it's a Kiwanis club or a library or a book club, is afterward people come and they tell me the kindnesses, and they're often little things,
mhm,
because most kindnesses really are little things.
yeah,
I call them micro kindnesses.
yeah,
Um, and a lot of us hesitate to do those things because they feel puny.
mhm,
But if we think about the kindnesses, it's somebody we're merging onto the highway and somebody slows down to let us in and things
Oh,
like that. Those things just make us feel so good. And then we're more likely when it's our turn, when somebody's trying to merge, to wave them over and things like that. It's just sort of a contagion.
it's so
So I think I
simple.
kind of diverted from your question a
No,
little
those are
bit,
really
but
good examples of actions, and they don't have to be
yeah.
big, gigantic. They're the teeny
No,
ones.
if we wait for the big gigantic things, we won't do anything
I know.
because sometimes we don't have the time or the money or whatever to do that. But we can always do these small things,
Yeah. And
and they make such a difference.
I was just coming out of my condo the other day, and if it's a traffic time, the street that I live on, you come up out of driveway, and there can be a lot of traffic both ways. And a young man stopped and let me in. Not he didn't have to.
Yeah,
It's not a place where you have to stop.
yeah,
And it made me feel good. And I often try to do that for other people. It's
yeah.
1 second or 2 seconds. So to any of the readers, I just want to remind myself, you, all of us, that they're just the small things that really make a difference. And when we're so preoccupied, like you said, not having enough time, we don't do the little things we could do. Smile at the grocery clerk, thank the bagger, um, you know,
All those things,
all
yeah,
the little
they
things
make such a difference. You know what? One thing I noticed, it was a realization early on, and it's probably not deep. It's obvious, but it's also kind of subtle. Most acts of kindness are really easy to do, but on the other hand, they're also really easy not to do.
Mhm.
So nobody's going to notice if you don't help somebody merge onto the road, or nobody's
Yeah.
going to notice if you don't speak kindly to the barista or the cashier.
Yeah.
But if you do, it makes a difference. It
It's a
sends a
heart
ripple
thing.
out.
It's a
Yeah,
heart thing. People feel it in the heart. It's more than
yeah.
an action. It touches the heart. And, we need more of that. Right now, when you look around what's going on in our world, there's just so much conflict and so much blaming and so much pointing fingers and people being a victim and people be blaming other people. And it goes from the macro clear down to the micro and back up to the macro. So I'm sure you feel like I do, what we do on in our own little world makes a difference because
Oh, so much.
yes.
Absolutely.
And so when I'm out there a lot, just in the stores or wherever I go, I'm constantly thinking about that and what can I do to contribute? Because I can't fly to another country and save starving babies. I can donate, but I think we could all be part of a tipping point of consciousness that, we all make up what our consciousness is or awareness on this planet is. So the more we extend, as you said, extend and express kindness, and I would call it love. I call it universal love. Um, I think that love is the most powerful force in the world. It's
Oh, sure.
yes, it sustains all life. And so we're depriving ourselves of love when we don't extend love to others. And I don't know I can't remember if you discuss love in your book, but how would you compare kindness and the concept of real deep love? I don't mean the sentiment romantic love. I'm talking about
Yeah.
love on a deep level.
Well, I think, there are a lot of words for sort of the same thing, and we choose the words we're drawn to. There's love and loving kindness and compassion and empathy and so many things, and I think they all come out of the same well.
Hmm.
Um, so we
I
just,
agree.
yeah, we just need to try to overcome what we're seeing in the world today with love and kindness, and not by reacting in the same way that
Mhm.
of what we're seeing.
Hmm. I agree. There are different words for it. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, or something that I noticed, is how many people do feel like they are a victim. And for example, I can't tell you how many people will talk about how customer service on the phone is terrible, or this person or that person didn't treat them right. And what would you say the antidote to that is? If you're getting poor service on, say, you're talking to someone from another country that's helping you with something technical. I just get tired of hearing people complaining. What would you say about that?
Oh, I think we need to remember how hard it is for some people to make a living, and they're doing the best they can. It's rare that someone who is actually working in customer service is not trying their hardest to help.
Hmm.
And a lot of people feel entitled. They feel like their problem is number one and you need to solve it, and my time is more important than yours.
Yes.
Um, it's really sad that people feel that way, and I think a lot of it is related to back to fear of, not really being in control, not perhaps not being worthy.
Hmm. I
I think we
agree.
we really need to get in that habit, have the practice of giving people the benefit of the doubt, assuming they're doing their very best.
Hmm.
And I think usually people are. And if we can treat them that way, it sometimes, you know, it sometimes changes their behavior too. If someone is having a bad day and taking it out on us, if we don't respond in kind, but if we're understanding and saying, it sounds like you're having a bad day. I hope things get better. Sometimes people will say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take that out on you. You're right, it is a hard day, but let me help you as much as I can."
Right.
If I think we get what we expect, and if somebody gets on the phone and expects that it's going to be a horrible experience, it probably will be. But
Right.
if they expect that this person is really their goal is to help me and I want to help them do that, we have a better experience. I
Yeah.
think people tend to find what they look for.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I think back to my career of managing associations, working with boards of directors and members of nonprofits. And they're all lovely people and they're giving of their time. But there were always a few members who would be the one to call and say, "Hey, I found a typo on page 5 of the newsletter." And they're the people who kind of they play gotcha with
Yeah.
life.
Yes.
They're looking for things to criticize. They're looking to show that they caught the error.
Yes.
Where instead of just saying, "Oh, it's a great newsletter," you have to point out that there was an error, there was
Yeah.
a typo, whatever. And that's a hard way to go through life, always
Yeah.
looking for what's wrong.
Oh, exactly. I worked before I wrote my book. I worked as the marketing director or marketing consultant for CPA firms, and they're trained to look for mistakes. And
Well, yeah. I
that's what
mean,
they're looking
there
for.
are certainly jobs where you want people to do that. An accountant, a radiologist, a building
Yeah.
inspector, things like that.
Yeah.
That's their job, and we want them to do that well.
Right.
But
But sometimes they
hopefully,
extend that into they tend to have that, so not everyone, but they tend to have a personality where they're looking for errors rather than looking for what's right.
yeah.
And you get a lot farther when for example, if you're talking to somebody and you need their help, if you start out with treating them with kindness, genuine kindness, you're more likely to get the service that you want or the
Hmm.
result that you want. And
Yeah.
but if you're going there expecting that this is gonna be a battle, that's probably what you'll get. Well, I worked a lot in workplaces, and actually, my first book was called "The Tragedy in the Workplace," and it was about the ego battles in the workplace, and that we're each the star of our own drama, and we're pointing the blame at each other. But the real
Hmm.
secret to unraveling all the drama and pain and suffering in the world is to look inside ourselves. Take the finger and look inside. What is my fear? What is it that I'm projecting out onto somebody else? And so the year of living kindly to me is just, I wish we all had in the world, we all could practice this commitment to really looking for opportunities to be kind to one another, because we all, actually, we're all human beings. We're all equal souls. We just have different backgrounds. Um, if you were going to talk to people that had never heard of your book, what would be some of the highlights you would think that would encourage them to read your book? Because I'd love everybody to get a copy.
Um, I guess I really would like people to be aware, first of all, of the how many benefits there are to kindness. I know it sounds sort of squishy and soft. And one thing I discovered early on, Dana, is how much science there's been in the last 10, 15 years about the benefits of kindness. I'm
Mm.
sort of nerdy. So one of the first things I did when I started this deep dive was started looking into research about kindness. And there are so many benefits. There are enormous health benefits to kindness. And you were just talking about business. The the research on kind, compassionate workplaces, as you know from your own lovely book, is that kindness is really your competitive advantage.
Oh, yeah.
A compassionate workplace has better customer service, happier employees with much lower turnover, um, fewer absences. They have higher productivity, higher profitability, much more engagement and loyalty. And they have an atmosphere where learning and collaboration and innovation all flourish. So all those things, if you need a reason to be kind and you're in the business world, that's a good one. And then on the other side of that coin, there's research showing that unkind or businesses, have heavy turnover. They don't have nearly as high productivity. Their employees are absent more. There's much more stress, low morale. So, things like that. And on the health side, it's been shown that when we experience kindness, whether we witness it or directly receive it or give it, it produces in us the hormone oxytocin,
Mm.
which lowers our blood pressure, it reduces inflammation, it
Yeah.
fights heart disease, it slows the aging process. Uh, Kindness has been shown to help reduce chronic pain
Oh, wow.
and depression. There's a lovely study that came out of, I think it was the University of British Columbia, um, that kindness reduces social anxiety in people who are painfully shy, even debilitatingly shy. If they engage in kindness or focus on kindness, it reduces that social anxiety. So there's so many wonderful reasons to be
Oh,
kind.
those are
Uh,
those are all wonderful studies and reasons, and it's just more evidence for the kind of work you and I do. I
mhm.
know that in the past maybe 5 to 10 years, there's been a real shift in the focus in leadership toward culture, where before my complaint was everything was measured in, spreadsheets and how productive everyone is, and everyone is almost like a number. And now they're trying to shift it to culture, which is a good thing, but it's really hard to do unless the leaders at the top start with being authentic themselves. You can't
Yes.
demand
Yeah.
that your culture become kind and loving and compassionate. And so, as long as you have some of these ego-driven leaders that we see in the workplace, we're going to continue to have the conflict in the workplace. And
Yeah,
so that's why a lot of the work I did was with leaders, because you can't, you have to be what you want your organization to be.
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
can't command it.
Yeah. And
And
you want to model that so that everybody at every level sees that, yeah, this is our kindness is our company's culture.
yes, and
And there are good reasons for that.
some of the things you said mirror a lot of the things that as women, I believe, more naturally have a nurturing spirit. And not that many men don't too, but there's a feminine energy that men can embody and women can embody. And I think in our society, a lot of men have been raised to be more competitive and kind of a one-upmanship. And that doesn't work when you're trying to build a culture. And what it was, yeah, and what it results in, I start out, got to look at the clock here. I start out a lot of times with audiences and tell them that what the employees often tell me is what they don't tell the leadership, and what they see in their workplaces is a lot of gossip, pain, suffering, blame, one-upmanship, and anxiety and depression, it's an environment, like, who would want to go to that kind of workplace? And
That's
so,
absolutely
yeah.
right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not so what I guess I hear both of us, we want to people to realize this is not just soft, squishy stuff. This is life, and this is will make the biggest difference. It's relationships, how we treat one another, how we um, honor one another, how we treat ourselves too. We need to be kind to ourselves and
Yes.
not be a doormat.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so I love to hear all the statistics and all the information that your studies that you've researched have shown you, because um, it isn't just soft skills. Those are the most essential skills, but they're harder to measure. And it's nice to see that there are more and more studies that are really recognizing that, and that it has physical benefits too, health benefits. And
Oh, so many. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And you mentioned that women tend to be more nurturing, which I would agree with, but I've also really learned in the last few years that men are hungry for kindness and very interested. I started noticing this when so many men signed up to follow my blog and they interacted with me in the comments and things like that too. And they were just as interested in kindness as the women.
yes,
And I don't know if we have time for a short story, but I'm
yes, I
just
love
going to
stories.
tell you quick. When I signed with my publisher, they asked me to fill out this questionnaire for the cover designer, so that she could, she of course didn't have time to read the book, but so she could create a book that would represent a book cover that would represent the contents. So I talked about how kindness is a strength and a superpower, and um, it's for men and women and all ethnicities, people of all ages. It's really a strength and it takes courage. And so a few weeks later, I got back from my publisher some comps, and she said, "Oh, you're going to love them." And I opened up the electronic file, and my heart sank. They were they were pictures. They were very pretty, but they were soft and pastels and ribbons and daisies and lily white hands with butterflies in them and things like that. And I went back and said, these are lovely book covers, but they aren't the book cover for the book I wrote.
No,
These make kindness sound like it's fragile and weak, and it's a strength. And we
yeah,
went back and forth for quite a while, and they were losing patience with me, and finally ended up putting a different artist on the project. And she came up with the cover that you've got there.
yes, it's
But I
beautiful.
think about it, men would never have picked up a book with, pink ribbons and daisies and things
No,
like that.
no,
Where now men are buying the book, men are talking to me about the book, women tell me they're reading it, and their husbands or boyfriends say, "Hey, can I read that when you're done?"
Yes,
So there is a perception out there that kindness is weak and it's feminine,
exactly.
but it's not. It's something that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength, and men recognize that too.
I 100% agree with you. It takes courage to be kind and loving and compassionate, and it takes
Yes.
courage to stand up and talk about it because at least in the workplace it was sort of treated like it's, squishy or soft,
Yeah.
and it's changing now. I feel like and I don't want to sound political, but I feel like the artificial masculinity is rising to an extreme level right now. And the true, more authentic masculine men they don't need that kind of power. And I'm hoping that this is the last hurrah for this extreme masculinity because just like you, I have lots of men friends and I know they care about relationships, they care about being kind. In fact, a lot of times men talk to me because it's easier to talk to women about it than it is to other men. And so that's part of the shift that we need. And your book is helping with that. I hope my book is helping with that. Um, indeed an important subject to be kind and compassionate with one another everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
So your book is available on Amazon, and are there any other ways that you?
Oh, yes. Local bookstores can obtain it easily, and you can get it online through bookshop.org, which is a lovely nonprofit site, sort of like Amazon, but they share their profits with local indie bookstores. So you can
Yeah.
always buy from Amazon, but there are lots of other places that you can buy it from too.
Great. Well, I will put that in underneath the credits when I post this live. And I just thank you so much, Donna, for coming on. I know that your words will reach some listeners and affect their day and possibly their life, their whole life.
Oh, thank you, Dana. It's been such a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.